Neewern Narik Dian, Wadarang Actanuk, Makburian Wadarang Bagaruk, Manamaith Mirabea, Nailinga Wadarang Bake, Karingarabu, Bunjo the Eagle, Wa the Crow, Kimbani Ba Dian Gilson. Welcome to Wadarang Country.
Live from Wadarang Country, welcome to Lance TV. Coming to you from the palatial new Camp Street Studios in Ballarat, get ready to laugh, think, love and sparkle. And now, it's time to turn that camp dial all the way up to fabulous. Here's your host, the multi-award-winning Lance-tastic, Lance de Boyle.
That's how we're starting the show. That is so how we're starting the show. We could talk about that all day, but we won't. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're watching Lance TV. I am Lance de Boyle, coming to you live from Wadarang Country here in Ballarat, the resting place of Bunjil Eagle. If any First Nations people are watching us live tonight, how are you? I nearly went for that and thought, no, I won't. On that note, pull up a drink and take a sip of your nearest sofa. Let's sit down and get on with the show. We hope you've been having a lovely week. We've been having a lovely week here. The weather's starting to come around. Spring is just around the corner. I think spring's like about 2 weeks away, give or take, which is pretty exciting news when you think about it. Wherever you're watching us from, we trust that your winter wasn't too miserable. We hope you've been relatively healthy. I'm just on health, I'm just wanting to share with you that if you're looking for some new exercise to do and you're a member of the LGBTIQA+ community, you might want to take up pole dancing, and here's why. Angie Jones, who we know as, quite an awful, yucky human being who's a TERF, has posted on X, a middle-aged straight woman I know, a mother, is a pole dancer / drag performer / stripper. She is now leading pride marches and giving speeches to children about self-acceptance as a non-binary person. It all started with a suburban pole fitness class. Oh, it's the beginning of the end. It's the devil's... it's the devil's work. It's not of God. No. Jesus. So if you really want to rub TERFs the wrong way, I think all of us who can should... she's dark-sided! That's what I was looking for. If you really want to rub TERFs the wrong way, I would suggest everyone start signing up to their local pole fitness organisation. And, oh, look, I'm getting... What's going on there, Cheryl? That's a bit exciting. There was a big dramatic close-up. Welcome to Lance TV. And it was like, even I was going a bit like, oh, what? I can't even stand that. But yeah, so if you want to rub TERFs the wrong way, highly suggest getting along to your local pole classes and start getting on there, because then you too can start leading pride parades. It'll be very exciting. Stripping. Don't have anything wrong with that. What else was on the list? Can you bring that up again for a sec, Soph? It was marches. Oh, giving speeches to children about self-acceptance. That's the one I was after. So giving speeches to children about self-acceptance is wrong. I'm not even going to bother with the non-binary element of that. Like, what's wrong with giving speeches to children about self-acceptance, about who they are? I mean, really? Speaking about really, though, I really would like to bring on tonight's very special guest who's coming to us from Naarm. They are a performer in next week's Festival of Australian Queer Theatre. Without further ado, please charge your sofas and be upstanding from your drink, and help me to welcome Em Chandler. Darling, how
Hello.
are you? Oh, I better put my thing in so I can actually hear you. That'll be helpful.
Being able to hear each other during an interview is an important part of the process, and if I keep talking, you might work out what I was just saying.
Well, thank you, just to make sure I could actually hear. It was great. But, are you taking up pole dancing in the near future now?
Look, I don't think so. My flexibility is not up quite to that. I can do a decent frog jump, but that's about as flexible as I get.
That's all right. I mean, maybe that's look, maybe you're in the 2028 Olympics in rap dancing because of that.
Look, who knows? I've never been a sporty person. Maybe now is the time to change. Maybe go from art to sport.
Fantastic. Em Chandler, we know you around Ballarat really as a wonderful theatre maker. You were on the show about a year ago. Tell us a little bit about why you're in Melbourne at the moment. I'm curious.
Why am I at the moment? I'd love to say it's because I've gone on this fantastical journey and it's all been very complicated things. It's just poor timing. I have a storytelling club I attend, and I can't do that and this at the same time unless I'm online. So I've been seeing family and get to do it online and get to do everything I like virtually. The wonders of the internet.
Amazing. Because the last time we saw you, you actually came into the old studio that had the water feature.
It was lovely.
Yeah, it was a lovely one. Yeah, we need to get you in here maybe next week.
Why not? We'll find out. There's all sorts of exciting things happening next week.
Oh, you're amazing. As part of the top of the show, we have a pre-recorded segment. It's called the Lance TV Artists Corner. Our very special guest tonight is the lovely Christine Allen, who you may or may not know. Christine has been a fixture around the traps in Ballarat for decades, I tell you. She's one of the most highly creative people that I know, quite musical. Quite musical is actually how I know Christine. But without further ado, let's go to the artist segment and we'll be right back after the break.
So my name's Christine Allen, and I feel like I've lived many lives. So I earn my money by nursing, community nursing, and I'm also a musician, a singer-songwriter, and a guitarist and an artist, visual artist, and I live out in the middle of a state forest. So it's nice to see you all. I hardly see anyone. So hello. My band's called KXX and I'm the singer-songwriter. We're a three-piece with Leslie from Holtz on the drums, Peter Allen, my hubby, on the bass. And I wanted to start KXX to get more into being the lead female singer-songwriter, rhythm and electric lead guitarist. What got me into music was David Bowie. I love David Bowie's songs, his singing, his songwriting, his whole theatrical performances. And I love Mick Ronson, the lead guitarist in Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. And I love creating music and singing and songwriting.
Now you're feeling all this evil and you're gonna eat it. You say you can't say, don't do everything right.
My parrot's on my painting. One sec. Come here, you little chicken. This is what my parrot just ate, yes. Yeah, so usually I would be working on music, but because of my accident in January, I've had to really take a step back from music because of the rib fractures and give myself time to heal. So usually I'd be focusing on music. So while I haven't been able to do that, I've gone more into visual arts to have more of a creative outlet. If you can see, these are my frogs. These are just a study of my frogs. So these are different frogs that I've worked on that are basically other people's frogs that I've just used for inspiration because I want to do a children's book. So I hope you can see that from different artists. Some of the preliminary sketches for my kids' book, which is the little caterpillar and the bird, and the caterpillar and the little lark saying each other. Yeah. And this one's a bit upside down, but I can change it. This is the little llama on the llama. It's like a little toy llama on a big llama. And in the past, I've also done Timothy, which is a self-published kids book as well. I went to London and drew some squirrels and then put them in and wrote a story. So that's what I'm into. But yeah, nature basically inspires me, and I love like authors like D.H. Gilmore, who was known as the Australian Walt Disney, and he published books in the 1940s, and he has illustrations like this. I'm also I've got a group exhibition coming up, and it's called Tool, and this is probably what I'm going to put in. I love old garden tools. Old garden tools are amazing. So, so the group exhibition will have about 15 to 18 artists, and I'm planning to get some people to play tools for the music. And, it'll just be like a nice celebration and a creative event where people can express what they want with the theme of tool. I really love working on ink, like this is one I did a while ago. It's a tiger and some flowers. I really like working in just pen, and because I find it really bold. You do it boldly on the page because you can't rub it out. So it's like, who cares if you make a mistake because you can't fix it. So I love working in just pen, just for freestyle, and that's like a foot I did a while ago. I really love pastels as well, but it's been a while since I've actually done them. Yeah, that's where I'm at the moment. I like drawing things from real life. I like doing community shows with other artists and working with them and just being creative. People often say to me, oh, you do so many things. I'm like, oh, it's amazing. But it's really just being brave, just saying, I don't care if I make a mistake. Just be brave enough to make a mistake and just do it. Yeah.
If you're interested in participating, email us at lance.artist.corner@gmail.com.
And we're back. Are we on Facebook? Are we going to do an ad? Yeah, let's do an ad.
Shh, let me tell you a secret.
There you go. So that is, we're on Facebook. Where's Em? There you are.
Right here.
So that's the little ad that's been pushed out all over social media. And for those watching on Facebook, if you are watching us at Lance TV Ballarat on Facebook, leave us a message in the thread for Em, and we will gladly pass that message on. Let us know where you're watching from. That'd be good too. If you're a regular watcher, just pop something in the thread. Let us know that you're alive out there, because we're a live show and we'd like to say hello. Em, that particular little 15-second ad on TikTok has got something like 13,500 views.
Wow, that's extraordinary.
Well, seeing we only just started the TikTok site and platform, I don't even know what to call it, page. We've got a few on there that have got a few hundred, but that one's kind of really hit it, which is great. And it's all over Facebook as well.
Yes, it feels like every second ad I get is for the festival, which is great, but I already know that I'm going, and so I feel like I'm not quite the people who need to see the video over and over again.
What are you saying? No. I picked that track especially just because at the beginning she goes, let me tell you a secret. It's like, I'm sold just on that. No, nothing else needs to be said. While we're on Facebook, is there anything that you would like to talk about that would take about 30 seconds?
Oh, 30 seconds. If you haven't yet, book tickets for the Festival of Australian Queer Theatre. Because I remember when I first got whisperings, this might be an idea, my first two thoughts was that would be amazing, and I don't think that's ever going to happen. Not because it doesn't deserve to happen.
Welcome back. You're watching Let's TV. I'm Lance Boyle, and I'm here with Em Chandler.
Here I am, virtually right next to you.
Fantastic. Now, Em, this is the part where we begin the interview. Are you okay with that?
I am very okay with that.
That is consent. Fantastic. Now, and when we spoke the other day, you were telling me you are the Vice President of the Australian Fairy Tale Society. Is that correct?
Indeed I am, yes.
Tell us
To
a
the best of
little
my
bit
knowledge,
about that.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, we're the only fairy tale society in the world. There are other groups that are dedicated to fairy tales. There are academic groups. There's the Brotherhood Grimm Society in the US. So fairy tales are popular around the world, but we are the only society dedicated to fairy tales that we're aware of. And it's right here in Australia. We started about 11 years ago, I want to say. I should know this. I'm vice president, but I cannot exactly remember. And we have an annual conference, and we get together in regional groups, so the state mostly, and we discuss fairy tales. We analyse them. We're writers, we're academics, we're visual artists, we're performers, we're people who are just vaguely interested, and we talk about what it means to write Australian fairy tales, what does fairy tales mean in an Australian context, what is and what isn't a fairy tale, and it's a tremendous, wonderful, quirky little community.
Amazing. Amazing. I love the fact that it's quirky as well, and because I'm not surprised by that at all.
It's the least surprising thing about a fairy tale society is that we're artists and we're quirky.
Fantastic. And not necessarily in that order.
No.
Coming up next Saturday morning at approximately 10 o'clock, you are appearing as part of an ensemble courtesy of Federation Uni Arts Academy. You're appearing in a piece called Aerial Songs, which is a piece that was adapted by Professor Rick Chu, who was on the show about a month and a half ago. And it's a musical interpretation of Shakespeare's The Tempest. Is that correct?
Indeed, it is. There are 4 or 5 songs. They're written as lyrics as songs in Shakespeare's The Tempest, and they're all sung by Ariel, the sprite that Prospero has the most control over, who performs all the magic for Prospero. And so Rick has set them all to music and taken some snatches of the text from The Tempest and from other Shakespeare plays, and has made this wonderful sort of 20-25 minute piece that also takes inspiration for this quirky section, talking quirky, in Act 4 of The Tempest. In Act 4, there is a masque. That's with a Q-U, not a K. And it's this pageant, this big regal, fantastic pageant when the 2 lovers are looking set to get married. And it's completely unrelated to the plot. It's just like, and by the way, here is the god Juno, and she's going to talk about marriage, and isn't that great? And it's this all very big pageant, very exciting. And so that sort of idea of pageantry, the idea of telling stories and why we tell stories, and music and the interplay for that, is all sort of wrapped up in this little sort of redux of The Tempest. And it's great. We did the first version in 2019 in the Ballarat Begonia Festival, and now Rick's done some more work on it, and I'm thrilled to be back, not only doing it, but this time playing the part of Prospero.
Amazing. And you were saying too, with this particular piece, that there's The Tempest, which is the play that we all know, but this little section that you're talking about was a play within a play, which I think is really, I mean, Shakespeare, and no, it shouldn't surprise me, but it's a delightful little, onion skin, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's taking this idea of the masque that happens in the play of The Tempest, only the masque we're doing is not the masque from The Tempest, it's sort of a masque of The Tempest. And so you have this all sort of interweave. Are we watching The Tempest happen? Are we watching people put on The Tempest happen? Or is it something totally different? And it's delightful. And especially because it's an ensemble work. It's not like here's Prospero and here's Miranda and here's Caliban and here's Ariel, because there is a whole ensemble and they all play Ariel and all the other bits, and we all sort of merged in and out. And even though I'm Prospero, I'm also kind of Ariel. And so it's wonderful, playful, enchanting piece of theatre. I'm really thrilled to be a part of it again. Amazing.
And just because I don't know The Tempest, there's kind of other Shakespeare plays that I'm kind of a bit more au fait in, but just can you give us a little overview? What is The Tempest itself about?
Absolutely. The Tempest is one of the last plays that Shakespeare wrote, we think. We don't ever really know because they're all published after he died. But it's one of the last, we think, and it's about this wizard, Prospero, who's actually the Duke of Milan, and he was usurped by his brother, and a kindly friend was able to get Prospero and his daughter Miranda on a ship, and they sailed off and ended up on this enchanted isle filled with sprites and spirits. And the two key ones are Ariel and Caliban. And Caliban was also the son of the witch Sycorax, who had controlled the isle previously. And so when we get to the start of the story, Prospero has worked out that the people who are his enemies and the people who'd rather like his daughter to get married to are coming by on a ship. And so he sets the Tempest upon them. And that's how the play opens. And then they all get lost on the island, and he uses all his magic to try and get his revenge and to set up loving couples and to seek forgiveness and repent for his sins and all sorts of things. It's wonderful, and some of the most beautiful texts that Shakespeare ever wrote, including the very last soliloquy, which very much can be interpreted, and most people do, is not actually Prospero saying it, but it's Shakespeare saying it, because it's very much about what it means to be a writer and a creator and an artist.
Amazing. So the Tempest is Gilligan's Islands meets whatever happened to Baby Jane.
Yeah, basically, yeah. With wizardry thrown in for good measure.
With some wizard, yeah. With Cat Weasel thrown in on top of that.
Yes.
I've got to say too, when I asked for your short bio, I was really quite bemused by your opening line, by saying, you often get stopped because people go, excuse me, but you remind me of an elf. How often do you get that?
I mean, look, it's not super often, but it's enough that people go, yes, that makes sense. But that particular instance that I have in my bio of, no offence to be like an elf, is I had finished doing a performance at a school, and this performance had gone right, and I was feeling a bit off, but, I was heading back to the train to get back to where I was staying. And this student who I had not met and had not performed for came up to me and just stopped and said, no offence, but you look like an elf, and then kept walking on. And I thought it was the most delightful thing that had ever happened, because I'm also a professional Christmas elf in many things. And so the fact that even when I was in my theatre blacks and not feeling Christmassy, that someone still went, yeah, you look like an elf, that was wonderful.
Amazing. With aerial songs, there is an ensemble of singers. Did we approximately 15 or 20 singers? And there's going to be some live music as well with that?
Yes, absolutely. So there's, in part, there's a backing track, which you perform to, because that way we don't have to have an entire vast orchestra. But there's live musicians. There's an ensemble of about 20, 25 of us. There's violin, and there's piano, and there's drums, and there's a rap, which is brilliant. And even though Shakespeare did not write the rap, it fits in so perfectly. And it's all sort of vibe, even in all this sort of mixed wonderfulness, is kind of like at the end of Glastonbury. So it's all sort of a bit sort of we're all a little high, even though we're not, because we're professional performers. That's the vibe that's coming across.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Em. I'm going to say that we're going to go for a short break, but when we come back, we are going to have some more of the lovely Em Chandler, right after this. We were going to go to an ad.
Sometimes I just need to yell and scream and jump all around. There's an animal inside of me and it comes right out when I'm feeling scared and angry. There's an animal inside of me and it comes right out when I'm feeling lost and lonely. Oh, whoa, whoa.
back. Welcome back. You're watching Lance TV. I am Lance de Boyle, and hopefully my audio is sounding a bit better. Thank you. Em, in the break, I didn't look down at my notes, so I'm just going to do that now. Oh, yes. Also as part, because you've got, there's 3 shows you're doing. You said 2.5, but technically it's 3. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, it's sort of 2.5 because 2 of them are squashed together in the same slot. But yeah, there are 3 distinct pieces of theatre performance that I'm somehow, I know why, but feel somewhat how I'm involved in the festival next week.
Fantastic. So directly after aerial songs, you're presenting a little gambit. Is that a word I can use?
Yeah, why not take a big
a
gambit?
little soiree. That's probably a better word. A little soiree of queer fairy tales. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Indeed. We go from, a great big, wonderful, musical, rich ensemble work in aerial songs down to just me standing on the stage and talking for about 30 minutes, doing queer fairy tales, because one of my many hats that I wear is as an oral storyteller. And I collect and I tell a wide range of different stories for children and families and adults and everyone in between. But in particular, I'm passionate about trying to find queer fairy tales and queer wonder tales. And so I have been doing that for quite a while, and I'm really excited. I'll get to share, hopefully 3, time allowing, next week, including one that I only discovered a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, look at you go.
Yeah.
The interesting part, you're actually a professional storyteller. You've
am.
started your formative years as a magician and moved into fairy tales. And there was something you said to me once, it was months ago, that there's really not a lot of difference between being a magician and being a storyteller. Do you want to connect that for us?
Yeah, well, all theatre is primarily about telling stories, and when you tell a story as an oral storyteller, it's like the most distilled version of theatre, because it's just normally one or maybe only a handful of storytellers on stage, or might be around a dinner table or by a fire, and the audience. And between you both, the talking and the listening and collective imaginations, you create all the world and all the imagery and all the detail that is unspoken. And magic is very similar, even though we are, actually making someone levitate or actually finding a car when lost. We are telling a story, and the more that we lean into the fact that, we do this together. I'm not actually defying the laws of gravity all on my own that is indisputable and put me in scientific test conditions. When we do that together collaboratively, incredible things occur. And so I love the interweavingness of magic and storytelling, which makes up a lot of my practice.
Amazing. And you were saying too, did you say it was an ATU index that
Yes.
that kind of has documented all of these stories, and some of the stories that we know today are 3,000 years old?
Absolutely. So the ATU index is a system by 3 folklorists that didn't work together. A started, and then Thompson worked on that, and Ulfa started after that. And it's basically the Dewey Decimal System for folk tales. So you can look up the ATU index, and you can look at 425C, and that's Beauty and the Beast, or 510A, and that's Cinderella, or 309, and that's Snow White. And the way that this is really useful is it allows us to look at the similarities between lots of stories, and therefore trace them across culture and across time. And this means that we can trace a version of the Blacksmith and the Devil, which is kind of Jack and the Beanstalk-esque-ish, about 10,000 years, or we can trace that sort of tale type, the bones of that story that far back, or in the case of the 3,000-year-old one that I mentioned to you earlier, and that's a tale type 514, the shift of sex, which is often known as the transgender tale type, because the character being trans is a key part of that narrative. And a researcher called Psyche Z. Reddy did her master's thesis on this tale type and traced back that tale of 3,000 years back to the saga of the Narths, which is the mythic cycle of the Caucasus. And so it's a fantastic way that we can look and see how stories have shifted and changed. But it's also imperfect, because it's primarily Western in its focus, and it's not looking at all the nuances of the tale. So while 514 is the transgender tale type, there are lots of other variations of Snow White or Cinderella or Red Riding Hood or other stories that can be understood or blaringly obviously queer. So that's lots of my work, is not just looking at the tale types in the ATU, but also looking and reading lots and lots and lots and unearthing tales that have been left by the wayside or have been covered by people who didn't know better because they were either being malicious or, more often than not, just couldn't see the queerness in them, and bringing that back out and showing them anew so they are known, hopefully, as well as the better known tales.
Oh, thank you for that. The other thing that I found very interesting when we were putting this interview together too, you told me the term fairy tales is a relatively modern term.
Well, yeah, it is and it isn't. We think of fairy tales as this great genre that's existed for time before time, and while it's true there are some tales that have existed for time before time, the term fairy tale wasn't created until the 1600s, so it's about the same time as The Tempest and Shakespeare, by Madame d'Aulnoy, who was a French writer. There was this this group of French writers, aristocrats, the Salionnaises, and they would have this practice because in the court of Louis XIV, they didn't have a lot of power, and although they were relatively well educated for the time, they couldn't do a lot with their life, and so they would write these folk tales, these fake folk tales, and then would improvise them and tell them to their little literary groups as ways of critiquing society and their status and what they could do, what they wish they could do, and what they can't do. And so popular stories like Beauty and the Beast was created in that time. And the term fairy tale as a distinct genre was used by Madame d'Aulnoy for one of her collections, but it didn't really enter English until the Brothers Grimm's first edition was translated in about 1850. And so it's not really until then that this whole genre of fairy tales gets crystallized, because actually what we think of as fairy tales are often wonder tales, tales of magic and enchantment, and animal tales, and some fables and some folk tales that actually don't have much magic in them but are really entertaining to tell. And so fairy tales is this great nebulous category that can be exactly what we need it to be or exactly what we don't want it to be, depending on who you speak to. And it's not quite as ancient as we like to think.
Amazing. And the other thing, the way you tell stories, like you're not sitting there with the book, like this isn't like we're not, doing drag at the library and reading directly from the book, but you're actually, the stories, but it's an interpretation of the vibe. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love reading books out loud. I love reading picture books out loud. I do that for story times for libraries often. But most of my practice is oral storytelling. And so rather than having a script, I have to internalize the story and remember all the imagery of a tale. And then every time I tell it, the words are a bit different. There are some storytellers that tell you that it's totally improvised every time. It's not. You get into practices and habits. But depending on how an audience reacts or how I'm feeling on the day or the order of the stories that I tell and something I saw on the bus, the story will shift and change. And because I don't come from an oral storytelling tradition. It's not like I learned lots of stories from my parents or my grandparents, at least not folk tales. Most of my practice is unearthing and breathing into stories that have been collected by folklorists. So like taking stories from the Brothers Grimm, they collected lots, not all, but lots of their stories from oral traditions, from people who told these stories around campfires and dinner tables. And then they would write it down. And then my job is to not only look at it and go, oh, okay, that's the words that they've used and the translation that's been used, but how can I make that live in me? And so that means taking key phrases I like, or it might be meaning ignoring the language entirely and just telling the story as best I can, starting at a summary and developing detail as I go.
Amazing. The other part of what you do too is you unearth more queer stories as you move through. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it could be easy for us to say that there are no queer fairy tales, no queer wonder tales. That's just the way it is, which isn't true. There are lots of them, actually. There's not, most of them, but there's a lot of them. But it'd be easier to say that the ones that we do know or we can find have been disregarded because people are being actively queerphobic. And I'm sure there have been actively queerphobic folklorists and collectors and writers throughout history, even before terms get unified and the idea is formed. But I think more often than not, they don't... They have to be sort of get covered, and they don't seem like we have queer folk tales because the people who end up telling them and who end up recording them don't see the queerness in the tale. And so my job is part of my job is to find tales and go, yeah, there's a queer reading in this, and it's not just me deciding arbitrarily to make Cinderella a trans. Nothing wrong with that. I have a published version of a trans Cinderella. It's a story I'm quite proud of. But it's not just arbitrarily going, oh, I'm going to. It's going, what words, what phrases, what themes are in this story that I think can be open up, peel back like an onion and make queer. And some of them are really easy to do because you're like, yeah, that plot point right there, that's very obvious. That's fair number of tales where someone just doesn't want to get married. They are certain at the start of the tale marriage is not for them, and the ending, if there is a marriage, is very disappointing. So it's very easy to make that an ace fairy tale. And there are others where you have to do a bit more work and go, no, maybe that ending is not because it's the most happy ending, but because the person who told it when it was collected couldn't conceive of the fact that the man might stay and be in love with the man, or that they might change gender or anything like that. And so there's some tweaking and some unearthing to try and make the stories really live and thrive and be worth the telling again and again and again, not just by me, but by anyone who hears them.
That's absolutely gorgeous. I love your fervour for this. Here is this playground, and here is you're playing in history, but you're
Absolutely.
But you're tinkering with the magic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of my favourite fairy tales in the world, which basically no one knows, is Icelandic, and it's a trans fairy tale. I adore it. I go on for hours. But I'm not convinced the first person to tell this story was trans. It's possible, but it's not necessarily true. It could be just as likely, because this particular tale type is relatively common in Iceland, that the first person teller just saw this fantastic twist that no one else could see coming. But that doesn't make it any less of a trans fairy tale. And that's true for lots and lots of others. And so the fact that I get to have this fun, what is looking at the heart of the story, what's the soul of the story trying to speak to me through the ages, and that I get to break that out and get it sit on a little pedestal and go out into the world.
That's not the story about the one that became royalty and then... Is that one? Anyway.
I think, yes, there's lots of royalty. That doesn't narrow it down. But I think you are thinking of that same story.
Yeah, and they go through here and they go over and under and through and around.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yes.
great. That is my personal favourite. Just to watch you tell it is like, how do you keep all of that in your head? But we will find out more about the queer fairy tales next week, next Saturday. But right now we need to go for a short break, and when we come back, we're going to have some more of the lovely Em Chandler right after this. Em, we're on Facebook, and
Indeed,
there
we
are a swathe of people there. Christine Allen is Go Lance, Go Em. Do you know Louise John Kroll?
I do know Louise John Kroll. Hello, Louise.
There you go. That was Christine Allen who asked that. The lovely Chloe Rose in the thread. Hello, everybody. Someone says elf. You start for the shelf. You start looking for a shelf.
Not quite. I'm a bit big.
Maybe it's a big shelf.
It could be a big shelf.
Johnny Wombat's in the thread. Howdy, folks. Enjoying the show via C31 mostly tonight, but just got time to pop onto Facebook. Hello, Johnny Wombat. If you're into short Australian films, you want to watch Wombat and Goose Out of the Can on CTV Plus, and I think the show's on at midnight. Gwen Blacker's in the thread. Looking forward to the festival. Em's fairy tales are delightful. Marty Monster, wonderful. Wow, so interesting. Marty also says, as a storyteller myself, Em has a wonderful perspective on the concept of the reference to the key messages of stories. Hayden Young, hello, darling, how are you? Totally agreed with Marty. Hi, Lance, hi, Em. Watching from rocking downtown Preston. Hello, Hayden. And Marty Monster says, Em is brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
There you go. So hello everybody on Facebook. Keep popping things in the thread, and I will keep translating that for you across to Em, because you are brilliant. You are. Have you ever seen that movie Fahrenheit 541 or read the book?
Yeah, I've read the book. Of course, I've read the book.
You're a bit, yeah, of course. But you're a bit like you're the keeper of the stories.
I am kind of, which feels very weird because I don't come from a tradition, but I do kind of I don't want, not because it's me, but I would rather like there to be like a tradition of queer tales that get told orally and not just. There was a book published late last year of queer folk tales, which is great, but I'd love there to be an oral tradition too, that we pass them around like we have for thousands of years, but this time we get to sort of.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
And welcome back. You're watching Let's TV. I'm Lance DeBoyle, and this is my friend Em Chandler. Em, as part of the festival, the third element, you're probably one of the busiest performers during the festival with your 3 shows. A performance of Numa and Carl is going to be happening. Now, this is a work that you've penned, is that correct?
It is. Unlike my queer fairy tales, this I have written down, and it will be done, hopefully, word for word. It is a historical play with elements of magical realism about Karl Heinrich Ulrichs, who was a 19th century queer activist and theorist and all-round rather brilliant person. And I wrote this play initially as my honours thesis in 2020. 2020 was a really good time to do your honours thesis. And now I'm really excited that there'll be a full read. In fact, this will be the first time the public will get to hear all of Karl's story, at least how I've written it.
Amazing. So, out of all of the world's worth of people, why have you written a story about some guy called Karl?
Well, because some guy called Karl is one of the most influential queer activists and thinkers in the Western world, but no one knows who he is, which is why you write a play about them. Karl was born in Hanover in Germany, 1825, and in late August, actually. It's almost his birthday. And he wrote some booklets that weren't the first booklets on what we would now call homosexuality, but different words and phrases were used then. But he wrote some of the ones that were really popular and spread like wildfire. And he wrote 10 in total. And he did some of the first queer activism. He spoke at the 6th Assembly of German Jurists. This is before Germany was unified, with a bunch of different principalities and kingdoms and city-states. And he did this formal protest about, let's know, we cannot ban what he'd call earnings, what we would call homosexuality or queer people. And he proposed the first queer union, as in like network of people to support for our rights, not just getting married. And he influenced people that we know better. Richard von Krafft-Ebing, who wrote Psychopathicus Sexualis, and Magnus Hirschfeld, people who we know and we sort of know their place in history. Well, they were directly influenced by Karl's work and activism, but we don't know about him, even though there's a biography about him, even though almost all his writings have now been translated into English. No one knows about him. So I wrote a play so that we can know about him.
That's amazing. And some of those people you actually mentioned too are kind of the founding people of psychology as well. Like Ebing was a psychologist.
Yeah, absolutely. Ebing was a psychologist, and Hirschfeld did some of the really early work on sexology, and his institute did incredible research for trans people until the Nazis burnt it down. But yeah, those people are fantastic and brilliant in their own right and complicated. But Karl influenced. Magnus Hirschfeld published Karl's writings for the second time in his lifetime, but still no one knows about him. And we wouldn't have them, we wouldn't be where we are now without Karl's work. And so it's high time that we hear his story, not just because it's historical, but because the things he was fighting for, the things he was thinking about are absolutely modern and present and things that we are still doing today.
Amazing. So that's Karl.
Yes.
Who is Numa?
Well, when Karl first started publishing his pamphlets, in part because his family were not so pleased that he was going to go out and do all this activism, he wrote under a pseudonym, Numa Numantius, which is mock Latin. It means absolutely nothing. Karl was just a fanatic about Latin. In fact, in his latter years, when he went in self-imposed exile to Italy, he published a Latin language newspaper and bred butterflies, which is delightful. So Numa Numantius was the pseudonym he used for his first 5 pamphlets. And then his 6th pamphlet, where he talks about this massive protest he does at the 6th Assembly of German Jurists, he publishes under his own name, but he does it following the work of Numa Numantius. So he's still keeping that sort of a level of distance that, there's this guy who does some interesting stuff, and then there's me. And he doesn't formally come out as Numa until later. But in this transcript and treaty where he's talking about this passive protest and what went wrong and what he wished he would have done and all that jazz, he talked about walking up to the hall for the assembly, and as I was walking up I said to myself, Numa, what have you got yourself into? And he sort of undercuts the whole Noom as the second person by talking about himself as Numa in the third person. So as a way of dramatising his life and not having a lot of exposition or a lot of monologues, I've split Carl from Numa. So Carl's the historical person. He's the real person engaging with friends and family and allies and well, not enemies, but people who are against him. And there's Numa, who's his conscience and sometimes my authorial voice as a way to talk about and break it apart. So having a conversation between yourself is far more interesting dramatically and means you can get a lot more nuance and details of this fantastic figure than if he just stood there and spoke at you for 70 minutes.
That's a really clever twist, Em. That is so clever, because we're used to kind of seeing movies that go, I am the actor and I am acting, and then you kind of get the voiceover for the inner voice.
Yeah, and then you've got the inner voice there, or sometimes mocking or being very much in jest of like, you do the thing, do the thing. Do the thing. It's like, fine, I have to do the thing. My voice keeps telling me to do the thing. It's really. I'm very proud of having come up with this idea and this creative device.
Amazing. Em, I would like to thank you for being a guest on the show tonight, all the way from Naarm. And of course, being a guest on the show means you get some stuff. And that stuff is a tiny Pride bag, just for you. You can take that shopping or pop a script into it. Oh, the book, my big belly. There's also a handbook for the Festival of Australian Queer Theatre for volunteering. Not that you're volunteering, but it's a good way to advertise the festival, I thought. And of course, Em, as for last year, make a bit more room on your wall, because this year you'll get another framed photo of me saying I was on Let's TV.
This one's in a different arrangement. So I've got one that's landscape and one that's portrait.
That's right. You can still put it like that. You pretend I was asleep. No. So that's for you. When I see you in next week, I'll get those things to you. I'll drop them in at rehearsal.
I can't wait.
Oh, either can I. I haven't seen you for ages, actually. I haven't seen you for a while, per se.
It's been a long while.
I mean, in real time.
Face to face.
I do have another question, but I'll ask it. We need to go for a short break. And when we come back, we're going to have all over the shop, find out what's happening across regional Victoria and a little bit more of Em Chandler. But first, we'll go for a short break. See you right after this. If you would like to catch up with them during the Festival of Australian Queer Theatre, head over to the festival webpage at www.faqt.au. Lance TV will be back right after this. And we're back. What I wanted to ask you, Em, we're just on Facebook now.
Yes.
With Carl, was he around the time when the whole eugenics thing was starting to take over in Europe?
That's sort of at the end of his career. So he goes into self-imposed exile when Germany gets unified under Prussia, late 1870s. And so he goes in he thinks he's done enough. He actually continues doing work, but he thinks he does enough. And it's after that the whole sort of eugenics stuff that starts to occur. So it started to bubble up before then, but that's
because Darwin's species,
Origin of Species.
Origin of Species was the jettison for eugenics.
Yeah, absolutely.
But,
and while eugenics is terrible, some of the reasons that Carl is not as well known is because his scientific thinking doesn't work with the scientific progress that came with Origin of Species and eugenics. And so they go, oh, his scientific theories are terrible, we'll ignore him, without realising what was driving that is actually really relevant and important.
Yeah, because I guess my head kind of went that way because it's my very limited understanding that psychology had, like the science of psychology, really had a lot to do with pushing that eugenics agenda, like measuring people's heads and we're smarter than you are, so therefore. But if Carl's in the middle of that too, kind of talking about homosexuality.
He's certainly sort of talking about it in a sort of proto-genetics level, but he's sort of before eugenics. Magnus Hirschfeld certainly did stuff about eugenics in the most positive way one can do eugenics. There isn't a positive way, but it was with good intention. But yeah, that's just after Carl finishes and decides to breed butterflies. Yeah,
right. Yeah, look, so interesting. I mean, we could wax lyrical, but we are just on Facebook. I'm just going to check and see if anybody else has got anything there Hello to the people who are watching. So, how did you actually discover Carl?
Well, one of the ways I tried to get around the fact that I was queer and trans and in the closet in high school was that I would research queer history because I was just a really good ally. And because there's a picture of Carl, there's a biography of him. There's actually quite a bit of research for this niche video.
Watching Lance TV, and it's time for All Over the Shop. On the 17th, which is tomorrow, meet the artists at Gallery 10 at Bridge Mall. There's always some wonderful artwork happening there, and we'd like to thank Linda for that. The 22nd of August, the Festival of Australian Queer Theatre. Brace yourselves, this is all about the festival and what's on. So from the 22nd of August, A Body at Work by Frankie Van Can. That's at the Mechanics Institute, and that's on the 22nd and the 23rd if you'd like to see some of Frankie's work. The 23rd is the FACT conference hosted by Richard Watts, OAM, and that's here at the Lance TV studio at 36 Camp Street. Short showings is happening, Aerial Songs by Dr. Richard Chu and Queer Fairy Tales by Em Chandler. Who knew? It's the 24th and that starts at 10 o'clock. Maud Davey is conducting a masterclass at 11 at the Ballarat Mechanics Institute, also on the 24th. 24 is going to be a busy day. 2:30, Maura Finucane is conducting a masterclass, The Art of Urgency, and that starts at 2:30, also at the Ballarat Mechanics Institute. Polite Animals is also on the 24th, and that'll be at the Post Office Theatre, and that is presented by the Wholesome Hour. We thank Federation University for coming on board. Numa and Carl is also on at 7:30 at the Ballarat Mechanics Institute. It is a staged reading of a wonderful story written by Em. Chasing Dick is happening on the 25th of August. This is a commissioned work by the festival. Thanks to Dex Carney for putting it together. And of course, the 25th also has the Australian Theatre Queer Canon hosted by John Kachoyan. And that's at the Ballarat Mechanics Institute. Something a little bit different, on the 8th of September, the LGBTIQ plus Elders Dance Club is happening at the Collingwood Town Hall, and that starts at 2 o'clock. On the 26th is the Kingston Food and Wine Festival at the Kingston Agricultural Society. That starts at 11 and goes all day, finishing about 5. On the 9th of November, the Creswick Garden Lovers Weekend is on. I think it all starts off at the Creswick Neighbourhood Centre, and that starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. And Friday the 13th of December is the Christmas Market at Berkeley Square. That starts at 4, goes through part of the evening, and that's your little hint to start thinking about Christmas. Back to the studio. That's right, back to the studio. We are in the home stretch of the show, but I would like to embarrass you a little bit and get you to talk to us about some recent awards that you have won.
Well, recent award, there's not awards, but yes, the Melbourne Magic Festival, just these past school holidays, my show Once Upon a Rhyme was awarded Best Children's Show, which was very exciting, and I have no words. It was wonderful. I'm very thrilled.
And again, I knew I would embarrass you, and there it was.
You know me too well.
Well, I know her so well. I think that the work you were doing on a broader space is actually really interconnecting with the minds of people. I think we live in a world that's really too full of, I'll just look on social media to fill my mind. I think the humanness of being able to story tell is amazing, and knowing the way you tell stories, congratulations on that award.
Oh, thank you. And it's it's even, I mean, you always want like it feel great when you're in war, but it feels well deserved. I've been working on the show for 9 years, which is somewhat scary. I've been working on the show longer than anything else. And yeah, the gentleness is a really important part of my practice. We live in a world that goes, and sometimes I think we get caught up and think that's the only way we can keep up. But the ability for me or anyone, whether it's arts or in community or family groups, to just stop and be with each other for a time, whether it's telling stories, whether it's having a cup of tea, whether it's really being silent, is really powerful and really important in a world that's going faster and faster and faster. And so it's kind of nice that the sort of work that I'm doing gets recognised, not only for doing that sort of stuff, but that for all the other stuff that it shows what we can do.
Amazing. And just talking about recognition as well, you've recently been recognised with, was it a performance, or you put on a work during Midsumma?
Yes, I have what's now become a theatre ensemble. It started as a play, is now a theatre ensemble called the Story Keepers, and we adapt queer fairy tales. But rather than one solo performer, there's 5 performers on the stage, and we use chairs and spoons and blankets and umbrellas to create fantastical places. So it's very imaginative and very playful. And we've done 3 seasons now, 2 as part of Midsumma, and it's a wonderful way to show queer fairy tales, which is obviously my thing, but also exciting, connective, quiet, imaginative things that you don't need lots of stuff. In fact, the stuff you've got in your backyard and in your bedroom are enough to create mountains to nowhere and impossible castles and magical portals to fairyland.
Amazing. I love the way you just paint with words, like words are your friends, really, aren't they?
Oh yes, words are very much my friends. I can talk to the cows come home and then talk to the cows.
Amazing. With Numa and Carl, if I can go back to Numa and Carl for a minute, did you present Numa and Carl or part of it last year for a playwriting?
Yes, so the script was shortlisted for the Queer Playwriting Award Showcase, which is part of organised by Midsumma and Guestworks Art Park, which was wonderful. I was one of 4 finalists, and so as part of that, we did the first 20 minutes as a stage reading, which was fantastic, and got lots of wonderful comments and lots of fantastic feedback from the judges and from the audience. But this year, at the Festival of Australian Queer Theatre, will be the first time we get the whole play rather than just the first 20 minutes. And so it's really exciting to get into a room with the director and fantastic actors and be able to bring his tales to life for the first time.
Absolutely amazing. I'm really thrilled that you're part of this, Em. The work that you've produced here in Ballarat and that interconnection that I spoke about before, theatrically you are quite a linchpin, I think, in Ballarat. And I'm just so happy that you're part of the festival.
Oh, thank you. I'm truly thrilled to be, not even just a small part, but have somehow managed to be quite a sizable part. And not only to be part of it, but to be working with so many other fantastic artists and people that I don't know. There's so many people like, I've never seen or worked with you. Now I get to, because they're coming up for the festival. It's a truly extraordinary thing that happens. And we should all, even if you're not super arty like me, be involved and get into it, because this is the sort of stuff that we need here and now. It's not just in title, it's authentic disruption.
Amazing. I'm going to assume that you've seen the program online. Yes. If you weren't presenting, what would be your go-to show for this festival?
Well, what would be my go-to show? Probably The Wholesome Hour. Polite Animals. I love the work that they do. I've done a little bit of work with them in the past, but it's very different from the stuff that I do, but has that same sort of, I can't remember. It's really fantastic in physical theatre, and it's funny and is absolutely worth it. And all the masterclasses. I mean, very rarely do you get to have masterclasses of this quality at this price. I mean, they are so very accessible. And so those are things that I'm excited about all of it, but those are the bits that I'm most jumping and trying to get out of the gate to get to.
Amazing. Em Chandler, you are, as always, an absolute delight to chat with. Thank you so much for making the time out of your busy schedule to be on the show. And on that note, I'd like to thank Cheryl and Dr. Sophie. I'd like to thank Patrick at Channel 31. And I'd like to thank you all for watching, and everybody who's been on Facebook watching the show as well. rap dance, pole dance, tell stories, and come to the festival next week. In the meantime, remember, whatever you do, be kind. Bye now.
Thanks for watching Lance TV. We'll be back same time next week. Lance TV is made possible through funding from the Community Broadcasting Foundation. I'm voiceover guy Randall Smith. See you next time.
There we go. Is everything stopped, Sophie? Stop recording. Darling, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no.